Hope everyone is having a great weekend. Today we're looking at IQ, also known as IQIYI Incorporated, and it's an Asian ADR, and it's actually an offshoot of Baidu, and is a recent IPO listing. And here, just looking at the stock, I'll push it over here. We can see that the stock's recent share volume today, this week on Friday, most recently, was 52,776,440. and 440. And that's in millions of shares. And in comparison to the average 50-day volume of 16 million shares, that shows you that with a market cap of over $25 million, $25 billion, we can really see the movement of this stock as having a big upward momentum. But although there's a big upward momentum, we also see with a weight of 2.06, where 1 is equal to the average weight of the S&P, that this stock is highly beta weighted and has much stock volatility in the market. So something to keep in mind when you're looking at the stock. And another way to look at it is to know its implied volatility. And let's just run through that really fast. Let's see if we could find it. IQ. You can just do it based off of the options chart, and they'll tell you the implied volatility of the underlying stock. And let's see, going over here, we can look at and see the implied volatility for the options right now is over 107%. And so that shows you that the stock is very, very weighted to provide a lot of risk. That means the stock can move over 100% in any given day. And that's what the market is pricing it in. So when you're buying these options, they are overinflated off of the fact that the perception is that the stock is going to ride up or down in a big gravitational movement, meaning that the stock can go up or down about 100% in any given day. And the total volume of stocks that we saw for calls options were 69,000 in relation to 44,705. So you see that there's a big spread between how many people were buying calls and how many people were buying puts. But in the last 2 days, the stock dropped almost about 15%, at one point dropping 20% between the last 2 trading days, given the new trade tensions that is involved in Southeast Asia and America, with involving the trade tariffs and other things like that. And this is similar to a Netflix type of stock, that they do a lot of media type company stuff. It's a really great company, and just to keep in mind that the fast growth also comes with a lot of upside and downside risk potential. And we saw here that the biggest amount of call buying occurred at the September 55 monthly calls, and the biggest price was around 800 shares for calls at 2.4. And we see here someone must have did a spread, and this would be considered as a bearish, as a pretty big spread, considering the stock was $36, and so they're expecting a price movement about $40. And so the person also bought $15 puts, thinking that the stock was going to go down huge. And so they have a big spread of volatility, assuming that a 40-point risk, 40-point movement of the stock might occur in the next near side future. Well, what does that mean for us? Well, let's take it to the charts and take another look at it. Once we see that, we'll really know what's the stock doing. And you see here, we had a high of 46.23 on as recently as 6.8 and 618, where the stock reached a high of its 1 year from its prior low at 15.3, and we see here that it just took off on a giant movement. And using MTTS, which is our system of how we look for buy and sell signals, we saw here that there was a huge spike, and we actually had a buy signal. This MTTS LE stands for a buy signal, and we've seen here up until the price started to break down right around about June 7th, and we had a slight pullback, but that pullback was bought, and we saw a giant increase in buy volume up until we got to the 46.23. And on that day, on 6/20, we actually had a sell signal on the stock, and you could see here that on the next following day, on June 21st, we actually had a confirmed sell signal. That half crescent sign is a sign to get out of the stock or short it. And from then, we had a bearish separating candles, which shows a downward trend of the stock. And it's actually a very rare pattern to see this separating candlestick pattern that we see here. And just to highlight it, let me just show you what we're seeing and zoom in a little bit. So that that trend right here shows that the buy volume and the inflow was rejected off the highs, and we started to see a low pullback over here. And then following the next day, we saw another sharp decline in the stock. But however, it didn't trade and close at the lows of the day at around 35. It decided to hold within this trade volume and trade mostly within here for the remainder of the day. And at one point we saw the stock actually jump up to almost $39 and closed at 36.29. So what does that mean for the next week and going into the future? Let's draw using the Fibonacci retracement, because right now we're still in a bearish downtrend. Although I really like the stock and appreciate everything it's been doing recently, we need to keep in mind that it has a sell signal, and we cannot be too bearish or bullish on the stock, because knowing that it has massive volatility swings, we have to really keep that in mind whenever we're looking at this stock, because it's really going to be detrimental to us to just blindly go long and or short without knowing the fact that this stock could literally do anything in the amount of time that we see. So what I like to do is draw the Fibonacci retracement from the low of the day of the year up to the top trend, and you want to get that candlestick right there at the top, and then you can go into edit properties, and we can change it just to make sure we get the exact amount. 5.3 is the low, and the high is 46.23 as recently as of 6/19. And so just to keep that in mind, the stock is still on overall uptrend, but we're starting to see a slight top at this point. And looking at the 10-day moving average, we're starting to see it consolidate, and the stock is actually below this 10-day moving average, whereas the longer term averages, the 50-day and the 200-day, are all uptrending but starting to pull back. And using our MTTS kurtosis, we see here that it's trading relatively flat. So the stock doesn't have any big price movement upside or downside. The last time we saw a giant spike was around 531, and that's what we saw the stock take a massive spike increase up. And over here we're looking at the MTTS oscillator, which is a combination of different patterns and signals that we use to create, and oscillators to create a overall trend of where the stock is going. And you see here on 620 we had a sell signal straight to go down, and now we're hitting this line at the 50, which means that overall the stock's still going down, but we're starting to see, well, maybe it could bounce here. Well, what area do you think it would bounce, Eric? Well, I would think it would bounce right around, first I want to look at the key target zone of 34.40, and that's a really big area to keep in mind. So let's keep this area as a big price level to really keep in mind for the future, that the stock might hit this level. This would be our first area of retracement, because this would be a 38% retracement from the high of 46.23. Well, what's the next level that I want to look for? 30.77, I would say 30.75, just to keep it, a little bit more like a level that we can really see, that is, apparent to understand, and just keep numbers clean. The next level I really do want to look for is, you want to see it maybe retrace down back to the 50-day high of the moving day average, and that would be around $27. And so you want to keep those key levels in mind when we're looking at the stock. And this is okay, so now we have 3 targets to the downside of where you want to get in. If you really want to play it safe and you think the stock is headed to a major pullback, I would suggest trading at $27.12 as your price target for entry. If you want to be a little bit more risk adverse and you think that the stock is on an uptrend, you can wait until 30.75 area to trade the stock. Or if you want to get in now and on Monday, where are we going to get in now on Monday? I like the area of around 34, I would say 34.5. And then how do I look for trend lines and create trend lines now, right? So now that I have these patterns and the Fibonacci's, well, what if I want to just use the trend lines without using the Fibonacci's and, find an overall pattern for this stock? Well, we can do that, and we can do that pretty easily using the price target level indicator. And when I look for a support or resistance, support being the price that never usually goes below, and the resistance as the price it needs to break above, and I look for 3 points of contact for the stock, and that's how I measure a move and find a real direction for the stock. And given right here, let's say around, if you want to be, say, if you really want to be like, hey, I don't want to miss this trade, when can I get in? I would look for around $35 as your key price area to get in for an entry if you want to play it safe. Now, let's say the stock gaps up on Monday and the trade wars are, not going to pan out as much as we thought it was. It's very important to keep in mind, and because anytime the stock could just race higher, similar to a Netflix type of stock, and we know that because we've seen stocks like these just take off, and we really need to keep that in mind, that this stock might just pull up again and similar to a Netflix type run, just take off again. So 35 is a key area of support that I want to look out for as an entry. Well, let's say it opens up on Monday. What's the next level? And you see I have this one level of touch, second level, and third and fourth. All these levels touch, showing that the stock has a high probability to touch this area and retrace back higher. But at the same time, I want to find another level to get in. So I really do like the halfway through this bearish separating candlestick, so I could say, hey, I'm going to get in at the halfway point of this drop. I think that this drop was overdone and it was due for some market pullback, but overall the stock is still on an uptrend. So I like 37.5 as my key area to keep in mind, and that will be my second entry point. And so that would be my second entry point for the stock. And keep that in mind whenever you're playing these stocks. You really do want to know how much you're risking, and you can do that by just counting how many shares that you are going to buy divided by the price movement that you want to seek, and that will tell you how many shares to buy. And if you have any questions with that, just contact me at MTTS Trading, and we have a Discord chat room, and we can provide any help that you do need, and we're here to help you. And it's we're here to help the average investor, and just make sure y'all get in and pick some plays without really getting too risky. Okay, so now we found out the two short-term levels that we want to keep in for entry points, which would be 35 and 37.5. And as mentioned before, if you really want to play it safe, I would say here's another shorter term entry that we can do around 32.75. And that's also a key level if you really want to play it safe, which I recommend. I entered calls on Friday, but I believe that the move was premature and that we really do need to see confirmation to the upside, especially given that the 10-day moving average is starting to downtrend. So you really want to keep that in mind when you're doing these kind of plays, is what are we really looking at and how are we really going to play the stock without risking too much and without going out of our way to over leverage ourselves in a position that might not pan out. So now that we've figured out what our support zones are, which are our targets for entry, what are going to be our targets for exit? What do we want to see? Well, I like to do a 2-to-1 ratio. If our entry is 37.5 and let's say we have 35 as our stop, that's about 2.5. So I want to see a $5 price movement, which is double my stop from my 37.5 entry to 35. So that would be 5 plus 37.5 is going to equal to 42.5. And that also will counterbalance with what I'm looking at here on the charts. 42.5, you see, has a big price support line right here, and price resistance line, and we can see here that the stock usually should, if we get a strength back up on the upside, we should see the stock hit this level, and we will see a price pull up to this level, given if there is a market increase on Monday and we really do see a pull up. And then I want to be safe, and let me put my second target at around near the prior high at around 45.5, and that'll be our longer term target. And then if we do see the price break above 46.23, we could see a higher move up until 47, and that would be double the 42.5 entry, so that'd be 47.5, and I'll add that in just so you have it here with you so you can look at the chart. And just to keep in mind where we're really going and how we really pick our targets, and it's all calculated. We're not here to over risk ourselves and put ourselves in the hole because we want to chase something. And keep in mind, when you use options, it's better to put longer term targets out of options expiration, such as the such as the September calls, because then you have more time for the stock to do exactly what you want it to do, rather than trying to gamble in the short term, not knowing where the stock's going to move. Now we can remove these retracement lines now that we were able to draw the stock, and now we can see here we got two levels of support for our entry. Now, what's a safer term entry, Eric? Okay, let's see. I think the stock's going to move up, but I don't think it's going to move up as much as you're stating, because I feel that the market is so turbulent right now that we really need to keep it downside risk. Okay, well, let's see. I'm looking for 3 lines to really match up here, and I like the 40.5 zone. And if you want to play it even safer, we can go for 40 itself. That's also a key area. I also want to touch this candlestick line, and so let's just put it at $40, because that's a big area that this price really needs to break above to really have upside movement and really keep the stock going in the upward momentum, and really would show that this stock movement is not done and that we are on the uptrend stronger. And so just to keep in mind, these areas you can always adjust a little bit. I just like to have clean numbers to work with. I do think that another area of key resistance is going to be $39, so I will also add that in there for the short term. So if you're day trading on Monday and you really want to get in the stock, but you're thinking it's going to move back up, but not as prevalent or as the majority would think, and this might be a key area for it to gap up to on Monday. So let's keep 39 as a price target in the short term, because knowing the stock and how volatile it is, it's very possible heading into this 4th of July weekend we do see some price movement up, but that the stock also has some pullback areas down, and we identified these key areas of support for the stock to go below. And now that we have our support lines for 3 different entry points, now we can keep in mind where the stock is going to head up in the future and where is it going to go up into the future. And this support line, we could actually consider that to be a resistance line, because we know that the stock closed below 36.29, so 37 we could even make that just a resistance, and now that can be actually a point that it needs to break above in the short term. And let's put that in a different color just so we remember to keep that in mind, that this is the price it needs to break above, and we'll put that in orange. So that's kind of like the price we really need to break it above or below. If we trade below that point, we're really in trouble for the stock. And let's just add in one more support line now, since that we've seen that there is a lot more downside risk, and I'll put it in the area of that bubble that I drew, and let's put it around 30.5 just to keep it numbers clean. But I also want to see where the 3 candlesticks line up, so I'll actually put it around 30.8. 30.8 is a really good key level that we need to see the stock not break below. And if you do want to enter the stock, really keep that in mind as a really big consideration before entering the stock. And so anytime I'm looking for this candlesticks formation, I always want to see 3 points of confirmation. 1, 2, 3. The price just below all these levels at that level, and also lines up with our Fibonacci retracement, which gave us these 3 zones in which to buy or sell or short, or which would be wherever you want to play the stock. And I also want to do 27.5. It's a little above our circle that we drew, but that would really give us an understanding of the price according to the moving average of the 50-day. And so I really like to keep in mind with what are the moving averages doing. And so this will be our long-term support line, and for the long term we really don't want to see it below 27.5. And so that's really key to keep in mind when we're looking at the stock. Well, in the short, we can't overindulge and over risk ourselves thinking that this stock's going to go up forever. We really do have to keep in mind the price targets. Now, what kind of chart formation is this really looking like? Now let's just take a quick look, and now that we drew all the support lines, let me just show you and exit out all these, let me remove all these drawings, and keep in mind, well, actually I can just be able to do it without it, but so that's the price levels that we're looking at for key support and resistance. And as I told you, this is a bearish separating candlestick formation, and we're seeing a long-term we saw a top right here in the short term, which is only about less than a week ago, and the stock managed to drop over from 46 points to 35, which is around $9 in price target movement. So keep that in mind when you see a stock move almost 10 points, and how much that's really going to impact the stock. And before you want to enter, you have to look at all your oscillators and candlesticks and as well as what the patterns and charts are saying, and also look at the fundamentals and understand that news is also shaping a lot of these stocks, and price target movement isn't going to be correlated now just only with the technicals, because right now the news is impacting a lot of these great stocks. So you have to keep that in mind before you want to enter, and it sounds like a target that you really want to look for as a stock, but you really got to keep in mind that these underlying principles are also preventing a lot of the stock's upward movement. And so if you really want to keep in mind what are the key levels to look out for, 35, that's our entry zone for Monday, and if the stock opens up green, we want to keep it, we want to trade our entry above 37.5, and if you want to play it smart, you can enter at just $37. But I really want to trade above this 37.5. I want to see the stock open above 37.5 and hold that movement in order for us to break this bearish separating pattern, and that could lead to more downside to the 35, because we actually tested the 35 zone on Friday, but we need to see if it can hold and break above, and it actually did a good job of holding that. But given that the bearish candlesticks show us that a bearish separating patterns is going, and that leads to more further downside, we need to keep down the risk that is possible. As well as our short-term goals for going long would be $39, $40, $42.5, and $45. And now, even longer term, we could say 47.5. So I'll just add that in. This chart really won't let me because it's got a cap, so we'll just put it at $47 just to keep it in mind. But I'll actually, let's see if I can put 47.5. This is really where I think the stock would be headed if we do break above 42.5 and 45.5. And so that's really where I like to look at, and keep that in mind when you're entering the stock. You need to draw these price levels and confirmations and not just go based off of a hunch. And in the words of Jesse